So, Phil, is it any kind of dream come true for you as an art director to be getting to help design and build Mordor at this particular point in time? This is like a version of Mordor we've never seen before.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. What artist or art director or whatever would not want the opportunity to work on a game within the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit universe? But you take that and then you combine that with the fact that the new gen hardware offers so much opportunity to bring the level of presentation up to a whole nother level. So from a sort of creative standpoint, being able to, where even, a couple of years ago, you couldn't quite get the fidelity on the facial performance of characters. You couldn't quite get the fidelity on the body animations. You couldn't get the fidelity on the materials. So for me, it's just, especially with, the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit franchises, I've always approached them and looked at them as historical pieces, like real historical pieces, and I think that that's really important for us because, it is all about authenticity. It is all about understanding, where are these characters from, what are the materials that are used for their costuming, what's the geography of the world. And so all of that research is super fun, but then seeing the fact that we do have all of these different disciplines, we have really good VO acting, we have, good PCAP, we have good animation, we have good, character development, all that stuff. So yes, it is a dream come true, and it's been really, really fun.
There are a lot of original characters in this game, and there are also some classic characters like Gollum. Are there any other classic characters of Tolkien, Lord of the Rings lore that you got to design and get a take on for this?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the one that we are revealing today is a fellow named Celebrimbor. So I don't know if everybody here knows who Celebrimbor is, but he is the guy that forged the Rings of Power with Sauron. And so that character, when we were going through our narrative development and kind of figuring out what we wanted to do, once we started having those conversations, it was just, to me, the opportunities of, oh my God, we're going to be able to present this guy, the guy that helped forge the Rings of Power, and use him as a vehicle to present, the player options to play as Celebrimbor or play as Talion. So he and Gollum are the big ones that we're going to be showing more of today, and I think you guys are like, our Gollum's pretty nice, and I think that everybody that worked on it did a really good job.
It being Comic-Con, what did you grow up reading? Were you a comic book kid, or what kind of inspired you to become an artist in the first place?
It's a great question. I really, I grew up with the fantasy classics. I mean, not to go too far into it, but my family was really into literature, and so even to being 2.5, 3 years old, my mom read me books every night. So I was surrounded with a lot of literature. So obviously the Lord of the Rings, the Hobbit, a lot of the C.S. Lewis books, in my early part of my youth, and then I sort of branched out into all kinds of other fiction. But I did look at comic books, but I was a weird one because at a pretty young age I became more interested in like a lot of the masters and even the contemporary artists. Like I was really into the Hudson River School of painters. They're landscape painters. I was really into that and the way that they deal with lighting and detail, and those paintings are very, very dramatic, and you'll probably see, if you know the Hudson River School of painters, you'll kind of see that reference in some of the worlds. And then I was also really, really influenced by fantasy illustrators. So I was really, really into Michael Whalen. I don't know if anybody here knows Michael Whalen at a young age. But I was also really into the contemporary fine art scene. And then I was really into this contemporary illustration. Like I was, entered the Society of Illustrated Competitions, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but it was everything. So it wasn't just comic books. I mean, they were there. My friends read them, and I was into them. But it was everything I could find.
Were there any difficulties in developing something that's for next gen as well as previous generations?
Sure. I mean, there's there's always interesting challenges when you're working across multiple SKUs. But I think that from our perspective, Monolith is dedicated to trying to make the best gameplay possible, and the Monolith team is focused on the next gen game, and we have a company called Behavior that is focused on the current gen. So that's really allowed for the Monolith team to really focus on that next gen experience.
You mentioned like the Hudson River School kind of influencing how you design Mordor, but were there any other sort of artistic instructions that kind of kept in mind when you were working on the game? Or?
Absolutely. I mean, we looked at a ton. So, New Zealand's a great reference, obviously connected to some of the other media around the franchise. We looked at a lot of pictures and imagery from Iceland. We actually got the opportunity to take a trip to New Zealand, so there was on-location stuff that we did there. And then one of the really cool things about Seattle and Washington is there is a long history of volcanic activity in that area. And there's an area called the Columbia River Plateau, where there was all kinds of volcanic activity and flooding, and so we were really close to areas that we could go and do on-location photo shoots, which was obviously, hey, I get to go and drive out to eastern Washington and take pictures. Yellowstone, another obviously great place to look at for Mordor. So I think that probably does a good coverage if you're asking about. I was assuming you're asking about the kind of the world presentation.
Well, also just sort of the art direction in general. I mean, obviously Mordor is shockingly a big part of the game, but I mean, like also for example, character design.
Yeah. Sure. I mean,
That's why I last question.
That was the last question. Okay. So trying to go quick. Let's see, character design. Again, obviously influenced by pop culture in general, and a lot of the films that have come out over the last 10 to 15 years. As far as consumer expectation and level of detail brought in to costume design and the time periods associated with that. So, within the lore, we looked at a lot of medieval references, which again I think lines up with some of the media out there. And the big thing to say for us was a word that I used with all the team all the time was authenticity. So authenticity to the lore, authenticity to the time period we were referencing, authenticity to the locations. You can't get away with saying, build a bush and have some grass over here and have a rock. I mean, it has to make sense now because we can execute on that level of detail. But with the characters, I think my artists wanted to kill me sometimes, but I was really into understanding costume design and the types of fabrics that were available, the types of dyes that were available relative to the place that people sat in society. Like there's rich blues and rich reds, they just weren't available to people like the average people, like the Rangers on the Black Gates or a guy like Talion. They just didn't have those. So those things sort of define the type of materials and the type of palette that he showcased. And the other thing that's cool about that is that when we look at the two characters of Talion and Celebrimbor, obviously Talion was influenced by Aragorn. What a great character to look at. But those warm tones, those tones associated with the rough-hewn leathers and the type of cloth available, and more tertiary colors, more colors of the earth. The other character, which I don't think I've said yet, have I? No, the Wraith. Do you guys want to know who the Wraith is?
Yes, I'm going.
Who do you think it is?
No idea.
Nobody? No guess? Okay. And do you know who helped forge the Rings of Power with Sauron? Celebrimbor.
Here we go.
Celebrimbor.